Bernie Sanders was on Pod Save America talking to John Favreau. Apparently this dude's from Massachusetts.
This is going to be good.
And sat down, and Bernie Sanders explains his diplomatic stance towards Israel. Interesting that, I don't know, did Favreau talk about Egypt as well and Saudi Arabia? Yeah. Oh, he did? Oh, he didn't? That's weird because Jake Tapper led me to believe that whenever you talk about Israel, you got to talk about these other countries. Well, they're on different pages.
You've been very critical of Bibi Netanyahu and the Israeli government. We spend a few $billion on aid to Israel. Would you ever consider using that aid as leverage to get the Israeli government to act differently?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we are giving large sums of money. Look, let me back it up before the tweets start flowing in. I lived in Israel.
Yeah.
Actually, I worked in a kibbutz for a number of months. I have family in Israel. I am Jewish. I am not anti-Israel. Okay, I believe that the people of Israel have absolutely the right to live in peace, independence, and security. End of discussion. That is what I fervently believe. But I think what has happened is, in recent years under Netanyahu, you have an extreme right-wing government with many racist tendencies. The role of the United States, and this is not easy, I believe me, Clinton tried it, Obama tried it, Jimmy Carter tried it. This is not easy stuff, is to try to finally bring peace to the Middle East and to treat the Palestinian people with the kind of respect and dignity they deserve. Our policy cannot just be pro-Israel, pro-Israel, pro-Israel. It has got to be pro-region, working with all of the people, all of the countries in that area.
Let me just say I have two reactions to this. One, anti-Semite, clear anti-Semite. Two, let's let Jared Kushner have a whack at this. Shan't we? I mean, I know it was hard.
Let me just say, first of all, John, that being a Jew is a state of mind, and I have worked my entire life to get that state of mind out of my body, to not be a diseased, rootless cosmopolitan. And it takes a lot of work, but ultimately, if you're going to have a commitment to any cause that isn't a dollar or a silver nickel, you're going to need to get it out of your body.
Honestly,
okay, now first, that's number one.
There's a significant portion of the commentary.
You ever read The Wandering Who?
No, but the actual point that I just spoiled in the clip because of that bit. But if I remember talking, and I know you used to have him on a lot too, but Daniel Levy.
Yep.
And Daniel Levy, who is, I would say, a British voice of like an actual center left in Israel, which does not exist today.
And he was part of the
peace negotiator.
He was
for
part of the
Ehud Barak.
negotiator.
But what was significant was that he was part of a small part of people who was honest about why those talks failed and did not just do this blame the Palestinians narrative, which they've been dining off of since 2000. But I mean, he said, he was like, look, I mean, obviously people like me are further to the left in terms of like wanting full cultural and individual rights and autonomy for everybody, but not necessarily a state that is defined on ethnocentric parameters as a distinction. But that being, like Tony Judd argued for. But that being said, I mean, I remember him saying, like, look, Democrats align generally with like the Labour Party in the UK, right? Doesn't mean that they don't have relations with the United Kingdom when the Tories are in power, but there is supposedly theoretically some international reciprocity. And also that more broadly, that if you don't do exactly the type of things Sanders is talking about, there's zero hope for any type of center left in Israel. Now, I mean, I would already say that ship has sailed, but it's just interesting that what Bernie's saying is true and necessary and appropriate and everything, but it's also like, it's stunning that that's considered groundbreaking and brave. Although it is. That's like the paradox.
Well, to be clear,
commonsensical, obvious, and moderate.
15 years ago, pre-Bush, 20 years ago, that was basically what he went on there to say was basically uncontroversial.
Well, I mean, at the same time, George W. Bush was the first president to actually formally endorse a Palestinian state. So it's a wild history.
Yes. What they did in wrapping up and pushing for the Iraq War and pushing for the unilateral exit from Gaza, and in basically pushing Israel to be more belligerent in the region, was a total reversal in terms of the role that the United States played. It used to be the U.S. was a bulwark against Israel's worst inclinations and was used as, you know, I can't come out tonight because my mom says I can't, or I can't come out because, you know, my husband says I need to stay home.
Or we'll only build 10 new settlements, not 12. I mean,
right.
You know, which is true, but
right.
I think, but also, I mean, and also the disengagement, you know, wasn't a withdrawal.
I'm not holding up the United States.
No, I understand.
Beacon, but I'm
Bush,
saying
yes.
they were a restraining force. How much they restrained? Okay, fair enough to argue. In different instances, not enough. But the U.S. was a restraining force prior to 2002. And then it became a prodding force for the worst elements in Israel. And that's why I think you've seen such rapid decline. I mean, it was, I'm not saying that there wasn't a problem before, but there was the decline in the Israeli left has happened most dramatically in the past 15 to 20 years. And there was a legit peace movement. You had an assassination. You had a mass exodus of a lot of people who were less religious. It's changed the dynamic. You didn't have as many Russian emigres who are far more hard-lined. There's a lot of things have changed, both in terms of the actual demographics of the public in Israel.
I don't necessarily agree with some of that, but the only thing I do want to emphasize that is in line with what you're saying, but is a different point of emphasis, is the way those negotiations collapsed in 2000, and the fact that Bill Clinton and Dennis Ross and all of the negotiating team bought the Barack narrative and lied about why those negotiations collapsed is a big part of what not only discredited the so-called peace process, but also instilled the narrative that there is so-called no partner. And there's actually a great clip where Zeb Brzezinski, of all people, humiliates Joe Scarborough when he repeats that cliche on national television.
And,
Yes.
and no, the reason why they did that, the reason why Bill Clinton did that going out, he wanted that very badly as his signature foreign policy accomplishment. And in many respects, a lot of people feel that he rushed it and was pushing Arafat faster than Arafat could go because Clinton wanted that in his pocket as he exited. And it blew things apart.
To be clear, Arafat could not take that deal. I just have to say.
Well, here's the thing that people forget. The story you hear in retrospect is that they were offered 98% of everything they wanted in the West Bank. And here's the easy analogy to explain that. You and I are getting divorced, Matt, sorry. And the mansion we've been living in, I'm going to give you 98% of it. All I'm going to keep are the bathrooms and half of the kitchen where the stove and the refrigerator and the sink is. And there you go. You got 98% of what you want, my man.
I was going to really use that sink. But.
Yeah, sorry. That's mine.
That's exactly it.
And that's basically what happened with that. And Clinton pushed too hard because he wanted this accomplishment. Remember, the presumption was that Al Gore would be president. And then also Ariel Sharon, that disgusting human being who I hope he's sitting in a docket in the Hague's version of heaven. He marched on the Temple Mount and right at a key time and just inflamed, things. There was kindling all around and just lit the match and boom, it was all gone.
Ironically, I mean, the Olmert offer, if you're a believer in two states, was significantly more realistic from a Palestinian perspective than the one Barack did. But that was in a context where it was like, wasn't going to happen.
Too late.
It was too late. And now, of course, Ehud Barak is trying to make a comeback. And you know what his prime impediment is?
Corruption.
Well, they're all got corruption stuff, but his prime impediment is a direct investment from Jeffrey Epstein on one of his business ventures.
Oops.
Netanyahu gets to make a lot of hay out of that. Netanyahu is walking around Israel being like, at least I didn't partner with him. So that's their situation.
Who knew Epstein was good for the Jews?
Jeffrey Epstein with another service to the Jewish people.